there's no real garbage. There's always an additional use, because I think everything that's on this planet has its purpose, and we just need to reconnect with that.
Hello, hello. Welcome to the Good Garbage Podcast. My name is Ved Krishna. My primary reason for existence has been to find ways to leave our wonderful planet cleaner. We will be speaking with material innovators, creators, and propagators to learn from them how we can build for scale and towards a regenerative future. Their stories will help us answer the big question: what is good garbage? I have long felt that sustainable packaging products cannot be sold based on morals and ethics alone. They have to create value for our customers and provide applications with a superior experience. Along comes Simone Schuppan, the founder of C2 Impact, who enables organizations in the space discover what their true value is and then position them for success. She espouses the idea, quote, "Buyers don't invest in sustainability, they invest in value creation," unquote. This is a masterclass that provides an insight into Simone's process. Enjoy and learn. Hello. I'm so happy today to have Simone Schuppan, the founder and managing partner at C2 Impact. Simone, you don't know this, but I guess you know this. I shouldn't say that. The biggest challenge companies have is in convincing customers that it's a good idea to go for sustainability. So I'm actually going to treat this literally like a masterclass. I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you for taking the time and thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much for having me, Ben.
So I read this beautiful quote by you, and I think it clearly, I got so excited about this conversation because of that. And it says, buyers don't invest in sustainability, they invest in business value. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, so we all hope that people want to do the right thing for the right reasons. And oftentimes, people actually want to do the right thing. But as a business, you have mandates. As a business leader, you have so many different stakeholders. And the one thing you know how to do is to make the right decisions for your business. And this is when we see companies make decisions, and actually good decisions, when they can kind of find the business value of sustainable solutions, because then they see why they should be doing it. And if we can explain that to them clearly, they can get to that conclusion so much faster.
So I'm going to pose a personal problem to you, and let's see how that flies. So we run a company that is in sustainable packaging, or we would call it regenerative packaging. The challenge is more internal than external, because as humans, I think we have kind of accepted it as a fact that we're going to produce something that is going to perform poorer and cost more. And how do we change that mindset within our organizations first?
So just to clarify, are you thinking of kind of your customers, kind of the process that your customers are going through?
Oh, no. That's way beyond. I'm thinking about our own teams when we are creating stuff. So, of course, a lot of our listeners are people in the packaging space, creating new types of products. But what I find as a general trend, especially in the innovation space, the R&D space, we kind of have taken to our heart that whatever we produce is going to be of poorer quality than the current set of substrates that the customer uses. And it is going to cost more, and the customer should pay for it because it's sustainable. But I don't want to go to the customer bit. I want to ask you, how do we change the mindset within our organizations that you can create something that performs better and, as you say, is better value? May not be better price, but is better value. How do we change that internally first?
Okay, that is such a great question, because if you look at general innovations, people are like, okay, this is better. We're doing this, we're developing this, and then everybody's on board because we're changing the world for the better, faster, clearer, like something. And it's true what you're saying. When I talk to clients, there's often something coming from a perspective of, we're not quite up to today's like standard, like it's a plastic replacement. It's not quite there, but like it is so much better because it's biodegradable. It's like all the sustainability parts are checked off. And I think people just need to be more confident because while any of the innovations don't start out perfect. And so I do think that every team member just really needs to be personally on board, even if the outside world tells us different things at times, that this is the way to go. This is an innovation. This is what we're trying to do. The first car wasn't perfect. I'm pretty sure it got stuck many times. I'm pretty sure the first computer crashed a lot of times. And it also didn't fit in your pocket at the time. So I think as leaders, and I know you're doing an amazing job because I've been, doing sleuthing in the background a little bit, learning about your work, to get teams on board and be really excited about that. And when somebody comes from the outside, because oftentimes that question of, oh, so how much is it? At times it may be more expensive. Yeah, that could be. But like if people kind of make you get stuck in that part before you can even talk about the value, because it could probably still be, let's say, more cost effective if that new solution, let's say the new packaging, let's say the machine actually needs less maintenance by using that. Well, now we're adding things up. And you know what? The price of what we're buying may be higher, but we're getting so much more for it. And I do think internal teams do need to understand that entire part as well. And we do find that sometimes with our clients, they're very technical often, and they know the specifications of their products, which is, truly amazing. These different things, anything from packaging to different sensors to, like there's so much out there. But when they don't see it in the context of how their customers would see it, it feels diminished really fast, because if the customer doesn't understand exactly what it is, they do go to that, how much is it? Every time. If they don't understand more, it's can you send me a proposal, or how much is it?
And there's so much to dig in there, but I'm going to actually take a step back because I was so excited about, the challenges that we face that I straight away took you there. But I want to step back, growing up, what made you the person you are? Because as much as I hear of you, I see that you are a true earth lover at heart. And that goes from composting and your personal choices, the way you live, the things you do now, all of that. So if you can think back to your childhood in Germany, as I hear, what were things that made you the way you are today?
I would say it's all the different little pieces from everyday life. Yeah, growing up there, spending a lot of time in nature, going on hikes with my parents, spending time in my grandma's garden, digging up potatoes, helping sow beans, or all the different things that you have to learn as a kid, carrying food scraps to the compost, and spending a little extra time there digging for worms, because why not? And then things like going to the store, bringing your own bag, returning glass bottles, and over the years kind of seeing how the system changed, just kind of observing how, just like returning your yogurt glass at the cashiers at times. And today it goes into a fully automated reverse vending machine that can tell you what you just put in. But yeah, so kind of the little things that were part of everyday life, of going to the farmer's market, going to the farmer actually and picking up, some milk, but you have to visit the cow first. That was mandatory. Like you couldn't just go and get the milk.
Love it.
It's such a great adventure. Or yeah, in the fall times, picking up apples and potatoes from another farmer, and then having them in your cellar. Like the smell of my parents' basement, the cellar part is just so distinct. Like I will always have that with me. Just those little things, I feel they've always been with me.
Yeah, and that's such a good connect with nature. And we find that, so many people are losing that connect, and especially people living in more urban scenarios and children, who are growing up just going to the grocery market and never going to a farm. I think there's a disconnect that is happening, and that probably reduces a little bit of empathy. So two stories came to my mind as you were speaking. One was that our older daughter, we lived on a farm as they were growing up, and I would have her go to the cows to milk the cows, and she was so livid because she would work really hard, but the cow knows who's milking her, and and she would fill up that pot, and then the cow would kick the pot, and she's like, "I'm never going to that cow again." And but just that connection was so beautiful to see from a parent's perspective. The second was that, as you were talking about milk, my wife is a complete milk fiend. And we have this amazing German friend. I don't know if you know a small town called Schwabmünchen. And he lives there. And each time we meet, he'll carry milk from my wife from Germany. So that's like crazy that he does that each time we would meet. So I wanted to ask you, which part of Germany did you grow up in?
I grew up in the Southwest, really close to the border of Switzerland. There's a beautiful lake area close to the Alps. And yeah, so that's where I grew up.
And did you take the potatoes and make noodle out of it, or did you do other things with it?
We did all different things. I mean, my mom got into like healthy eating very early on to make sure that we grew up healthy. I mean, she would make bread and try all different things. And so we actually made gnocchi. That was like later on. It wasn't an early childhood experience. But the other thing is, so like each area has kind of its distinct history. And so I actually was born in a slightly different area, an hour away, but it's a different culture almost, and something called spätzle. It's a certain type of pasta is made there. And so we actually made that quite a bit because that's kind of one of my favorite foods. But you have to, the dough is very thin and you put it on a wooden board, and then you have to cut very fast into the boiling water. So it's quite the thing to do. And so I feel like that's one of my favorite childhood memories in terms of making food, because those noodles tasted really good.
Yeah, I hope you're teaching the next generation how to do it so that it continues, that tradition. I have managed to spend a lot of time in the southwest region of Germany. So because we buy a lot of pulp and paper machinery, and there's a lot of density of technology providers in that area. So just up and down the west of Germany has been a lot of time there. Okay, so why get into, so you grew up rural and you connected with the land, and then you went ahead and did a bachelor's in business and a master's in business. So what made that kind of choice come through for you?
It sounds like a big leap, doesn't it? The thing is, what happened, I really wanted to do everything, which is a problem, right? I was interested in all different things from language to science. I wanted to study biology, but I didn't like the experimenting on animals. So then I was told the only thing I could work on was bacteria, which then kind of sounded boring. So I had to kind of move on from that. Medicine didn't quite work because it takes such a long time until you can actually do something. And it turned out that that was one of the biggest factors why I chose business. I'm kind of an impatient person. I'd like to make things happen. And when I talked to some people, when visited some universities, they recommended that to me. And I was not happy because I was not into a business. Like that would be the part of the newspaper I was skipping, the part of the news I was skipping. I was like, blah, 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 money, money, money. It just didn't like excite me. The whole, people being greedy about money. So I had like an issue with that part. But then I learned more about it and decided I was going to give it a shot. And that was the best decision ever, to jump into something that I really didn't know about, but knowing the outcome, that really spoke to me, to know that whatever else I would encounter in life, I could do something with it. And that kind of held true. So my nerdery around like science and numbers and all these things, I can bring now in. I have other people who are the experts, but I can help them do something with it. So I feel like that was a good decision, but it was a big step and it took quite some time to get where I'm today.
How did the whole move to US happen? Because you did your bachelor's in Germany, and then again, as far as we know, you moved for your master's to US. So moving to US and stay, both those are kind of, you can move for a degree and go back to Germany. So how did that transpire?
That was actually a whole different reason. So in high school, like I always wanted to travel, and we didn't have that much money growing up. We would travel within Europe, but I really wanted to see the world. So another thing on my bucket list was I wanted to become a diplomat because, well, then you can travel the world, right? So that didn't work, but I really wanted to find a way to explore different parts of the world right after school. In Germany, you can do like a year between ending school and starting studying. That comes from you used to have like the guys had to go to do either be in the army for a year or do a social service. And then there was kind of the parallel for women because it was kind of like, hey, if the guys can't go directly to university, we can do kind of it's called a social year. So a lot of people serve in different institutions throughout that year or do a little more self exploration. And I felt I needed a little more self exploration. And it was between going to South America. I have family in Argentina, but my Spanish wasn't good, or taking the leap to go to the US as an au pair, because that was another kind of program that existed. So, because I didn't quite see myself just hopping on an airplane and then just like traveling for a year, I needed a little more structure. And so I decided, I'm like, I know how to take care of kids. I have fun with kids, playing, doing things, and I love teaching. And so I decided that was the route that would get me to get to know another country, and and make that possible. So 2 weeks after graduating from high school, I was on an airplane to the U.S.
And then, of course, but as far as I understand, you went back for your undergrad degree to Germany, or did you do both undergrad and postgrad in US?
Yeah, so I like to follow the rules. So I went with my 1 year agreement to the US, did my au pair work, and stayed with a wonderful family that I'm still in contact with today. And then I went back to Germany to start studying business. And through that program, they had an exchange program with Western Illinois University. And because I knew if there was a reason why I should come back to the US, there would be a path. I didn't lay that out. I just was open to possibilities. And so yeah, that got me back for my graduate studies.
And then so of course, you take a very different path from what you are on right now. And there's a lot of brokering in there and research in there. So, not getting into the bio of that too much, but tell me how that fed into what you do today. What were things that you learned in your career pre C2 Impact that kind of fed into what you do today? The things that you did as a researcher, and I'm told you love data, and so all of that. How does that impact your work today?
Yeah, so it turned out I took a really long apprenticeship for having my own business. So yeah, having fallen into commercial real estate, what I learned is about all different industries. You can probably name any industry, and I've done something in that industry between research, talking to clients, talking with different government entities, like all those different things, and learning how people make decisions, like how many people are involved in making big corporate decisions and what is really on people's minds technically, but then also in conversations, like listening, understanding what are problems that in that specific case hadn't anything to do with real estate. So again, like I can translate that into today of where what do people have on their mind on their day to day? What is a stress factor? Those different things. So that was really good. And then the other parts were I was in sales. I was making cold calls, which was terrible, especially as I know now. I didn't really care for the subject. I can't sell something that I don't know anything about and that wasn't really near and dear to my heart, but that took some time to understand. So, but it was such a great opportunity to kind of be thrown into something that you don't know and just deal with it. That was really good. And then, of course, the data side, running statistics, market research, dealing with lots of data points and making sense of it and bringing that back into the business because any number is completely meaningless if we can not connect it to something that is of relevance. And so that was an important part as well. And then having fantastic colleagues, leading teams across the entire country in different time zones. So lots of different parts that now totally make sense. I'm like, I need all of these different things to have my own business.
Yeah, one of my mentors once taught me that everything happens for a reason, and it's always better to build on top of what you've accumulated rather than dumping it all and starting, something totally different, which will not lean on things that you've done. But you carry so much knowledge and information from the things that you do that it can feed into what you're doing today. So of course, I've been really excited about this part of listening from you, how you are a reborn COVID child. And so I want to hear that story in detail on what happened. How did this whole trajectory shift during COVID? And what were those aha moments that made you take this huge leap into a relatively different industry and as an entrepreneur? Because both those takes a lot of courage and conviction.
Well, so we're going back to 2020. The beginning of March, I did receive a call from my boss, and it was put something on my calendar. And when there's the next thing that pops up next to it, it's called HR, then you kind of know there's this is not going to be a great conversation. And so I was like, okay, so this wasn't kind of a surprise. The company had been going through different reorgs. Every company, every industry just does that, right? You know that. And so yeah, they told me, Simone, you're doing amazing work, but we decided to go a different path. And so they kind of took all of our research and did something else with it. And I was upset for like 30 minutes. I went outside, went for a walk. I was like, dang it. And then I went to work. I'm like, okay, so well, let's look what can we do with this. And so that was 2 weeks before COVID shut down everything. So the nice thing was because my company went through a restructuring, I wasn't fired. I was basically employed until May. And my boss told me, you know what, Simone, you've done amazing work. Just hang out. Why not? Because I was like, where are all the documents? Where should I put all the stuff? I want to leave everything perfectly organized. And he was like, it's okay. So I thought, well, you know what? I will use this time. And then COVID shut everything down, but I was already in the middle of working out what I wanted to do. I was very clear that this was a sign I needed to go out on my own. I've always wanted to do it, but I was too chicken. I had kids, I had a good corporate job, I had great people who I was working with. I was working from home. I had a global team. I mean, this was great for a young mom who has so many things on her plate. This was the great setup. And I really enjoyed the work and everything, but there was always that itch. And so I decided this is it. This is my chance. And kind of looking into so what does it mean? You want to have a business, but what can you actually bring to the table? That was the next big question.
So yeah, the next big question comes, and then of course, there are many directions you can go in. So of course you take a very specific direction, and I'm really keen to hear how that deduction, the structure of that deduction that, okay, this is what I'm going to do happen?
So while I was in corporate, I already had a little bit of that entrepreneurial spirit going, and I had been involved in a lot of like additional strategic work. So I always had my job, and then I got to do fun stuff that I was pulled into, M&A stuff, different types of presentation, strategic, operational stuff. And I had the opportunity to create a small service company within the company because I did see the need for our sales professionals to not spend time doing research in companies and what's important to the company that you're meeting with and kind of reading their different reports, the 10K, their annual reports, their investor presentations. Our salespeople didn't have the time or necessarily the want to do that. So I created a little service around that and people loved it. And so I kind of took that idea as kind of the base of my business of kind of understanding companies. And I called it Client Canvas because I wanted to kind of draw a picture of your clients. And so that was kind of in the beginning stages. I talked to a lot of former brokers who were basically clients of mine within the company and other people's in the industry. And I kind of started doing work. And I liked it. It was kind of fun, but I felt I was kind of doing the same thing I was doing in corporate, but just on my own. And I felt stressed. And so I was kind of thinking, I need to change something, but which part of it? And that's how I decided I really needed to align my personal values with what I'm doing every day. And that's where I decided I wanted to only work with companies in the sustainability space and that I wanted to bring what I do best to the table. I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer, but I really understand how people make decisions, understand the business process. And through the conversations, that was exactly what people told me that they were missing. And so that's how Seed to Impact was born.
And how long was this process to start from this 30-minute later idea or maybe 3 month later initial thought, and then going to, okay, this is my business plan, this is how I plan to offer this kind of service? How long was that process to kind of thresh it out and say, okay, this looks neat and clean and this is what I'm going to offer?
I would say it's about 9 months. Funny enough, I went back. I'm like, okay, yeah, 9 months. There we have the new baby.
Perfect timing. and how did you meet your co-founder, Dave? Did you already know him? How did that come about, and why him?
Why him? Well, it turns out he's my husband.
I was guessing that may be the case, but you had different names. So I thought maybe not. I'll ask. And why did he choose to join you? Why did he say that, okay, this sounds like a good idea, Simone?
Well, so funny enough, he already had his own consultancy going. He comes from the background of big tech, having worked for IBM and Cisco, and he's really into explaining big technology transformation and making that work for big corporations. And so I'm the personal touch person, making people comfortable, making sure everybody's like, let's take the stress out. You have enough stress on your plate, kind of. And he would ask me for advice, and then I would ask him for advice because he's very, very good at like strategic thinking and really digging into the minute details of that kind of stuff, especially as it relates to combining strategy and technical things. And then at one point we sat down and we said, you know what, why don't we just do this together? This sounds like a really great idea to combine that. And that's kind of, yeah, when he joined me, because he feels very strongly about the topic of sustainability as well. And that was kind of a natural next step for us.
So you talked about your aligning your personal kind of, I would say, true north with that which you do at work. So, and I mentioned this right in the beginning that, whatever little we know about you, it seems like you are truly embedded in this idea of serving the planet in some way. So what are the key things that you think you do as a person that enables a positive shift in the smaller kind of domain of your personal life, your family, children, community nearby? What are the choices that you've made that you feel have positively impacted yours and their lives?
Yeah. So what I live by every day is making a difference for people and trying to make good decisions. I'm not saying I'm always making the best decisions, right? Like that just is not something I can like say that happens every day. But I try to make really decisions that supports people, and when I can make small decisions for my family, thinking through, okay, buying something or making some food or teaching my children to, just take another look at something or ask questions and not just, taking things in. And also having conversations with people about things, not in a kind of a pushy way, but just like to have an open conversation. So it was kind of funny last year when I did the compost challenge, posting for 30 days about compost. I had the most amazing conversations with people. Um, I would like somebody would approach me and start talking about how they were composting in their yard. And I like they were just a random far away ish neighbor who my prejudice was kind of like, oh, they don't care about that kind of stuff. Like I did not have the impression the person would care about composting at all. And they really wanted to share all the details of how they were doing it, why this was important for their garden, and the changes they've seen. And it was just the most amazing conversation. And I would never have started the topic around sustainability, composting, or anything with that person. But just gently being out there and opening those conversations, that has been extremely rewarding and like show me how people can connect no matter what there is, like media headlines, I don't care, but we can connect on a very personal level, person to person, and that's been truly amazing.
Yeah, the sustainability conversation seems like a religion conversation, right? You believe in this or not? So I'm glad you had those conversations. And this is the most, of course, I've been waiting to get to this part. Let's talk more about C2 Impact, what it does, and how does it go about it. And let's add on, because lots of our listeners are actually people who are in the space of, well, in our case, it's a lot of sustainable packaging, but sustainability industry. So then let's add on what would be the process if they were to seek your help as well. But let's start with C2 Impact and see where it takes us.
So yeah, in short, we partner with Greentech companies to help them reach a mainstream audience. Oftentimes, our clients have been rather successful in talking to customers, getting them on board, mainly because those people care about sustainability, they're early adopters, they're excited about new technologies. They're basically, hey, sign me up. I'm doing this. However, to really reach a broad audience and really make that impact, kind of really change the world, we have to get to people who may not necessarily care about sustainability as much, or it's hard for that setup. And so what we do is we really focus on the business value of what those new technologies bring to businesses. And we express that in that language between numbers and words. That's how we help make the business case and step into the shoes of a corporate buyer. So really seeing it from the customer perspective of our clients.
And what do you find are the most common challenges in that process for a company that is trying to provide a sustainable solution and they are not being able to, find the right market, et cetera, et cetera? So are there a kind of common list of issues that you find with the various people you talk to?
Yeah, so a few common things are, as we talked earlier, the cost, where that's the immediate question. So how much is it? And if it's more expensive than whatever they have currently, it's often a no-go. Something else that happens is that companies will reach out on the sustainability side, connect with the sustainability team, and then run into one, getting excited people, but also we don't have the budget. And then it becomes hard. And a third thing we see quite often is that companies get into a pilot, because you kind of talk anybody into a pilot almost. And then they're stuck in an endless round of pilots of where we can keep it going or it kind of dies. That's another big scenario that we find.
The Good Garbage podcast has been brought to you by Paka. Paka has been creating solutions in the food packaging, carry, and service space. Paka utilizes sugarcane residue and upcycles it into amazing products. Their latest offering is a compostable, flexible packaging solution for the chocolate and confectionery industry. The products are available in the Indian subcontinent and in North America now. Paka is also building an end-to-end solutions for customers in the food service and delivery space. For any query, do email at connect@paka.com, and Paka is Pakka. Now, back to the show. So I'll give you a real life example that I had, and I'd love for you to kind of parse it out and see what we should have done differently. So this was way back, maybe 10 or 12 years back. We were obsessed with this idea of changing multi-layered flexible packaging, things for chips and crackers and that sort of thing. And we came out with a solution. It was about 3x the price, but it kind of worked. So I was trying to talk to this gentleman. I think I can name the company. It was one of the important people at General Mills. And I was giving him the spiel, come on, you guys have to take the lead. You have to shift some of your stuff and then just going on about the ecological impact that their choices were making. And he actually looked at me square in the eye and he said, Ved, do you realize what you're saying? I was like, yes, I'm trying to make you shift. And he said, okay, think about this. Think about a bag of potato chips. Think about the growing of the potatoes and the energy it takes. Think about the reaping of the crop, the taking it, sorting it, taking it to a cold storage, then again, sorting it again, taking it to our factory, the transportations in between, the amount of energy we use, the amount of water we use, etc., in that process. And then again, we reject some of it. And then the energy for converting it to an edible product, then packaging it, and then transporting it to the market. Imagine if one packet did not work. What would happen? Would that be a higher ecological impact or the packaging itself? And it really opened my eyes that, I just literally felt like the dharma of the packaging is to protect what is inside. If that is not happening, everything else is secondary. So of course, it took us back to the drawing board, and we, of course, haven't made the sale yet in the last 10 years. So how would you have gone about this argument, and how would you have coached me that, Ved, you need to do this differently? And what would value be in that case? How would I counter-argue the person who understood so much?
That's actually, this sounds like such a common scenario. So it's like you're definitely not alone in that. And
What? My story is not unique, Simone. You're killing me. Come on. No, go ahead.
So one thing that we work on with our clients is to preempt that, to kind of understand who are we talking to. If it's an individual first conversation, was that kind of the second, third, whatever conversation with additional people coming in. And so for me, it would be looking at this person, like what are they doing in their day-to-day job? So was this like an operations manager, somebody who had to make sure that the parts of the operations were going smoothly? Is it somebody, let's say, on the manufacturing floor overseeing all the different machinery, packaging machinery, kind of understanding really the person that you're talking to, what is on their mind every day, what problems do they typically run into? What's the biggest problem they run into? And also, what do they get measured by? Do they get measured by unit output? Do they get measured by low number of issues in production? Are they measured by revenue? Are they, if there's an additional of their customers, are there any kind of KPIs, any kind of measurements that they have to follow through for that? And then kind of tying the conversation into that and kind of digging into the problem. So I mentioned earlier something about kind of, machine uptime. So let's say you talk to them about kind of, hey, so how are things going for, let's pick some product, like some cookies or whatever. And they share, oh, we've had like these machines get stuck, and like maybe that's not a packaging machine, but like, kind of get into kind of the direction of what is their headache? What other things are they thinking about? As you were saying, if the packaging fails, then the product fails. It can't be sold, and it's a whole mess that's attached to it. So how does your packaging solve for any of those problems that are high on the list? So if there's, let's say, sharing, you've had such issues with the machinery, well, maybe you found in your research as you were dealing with the packaging, because of the materials of your packaging, it's easier on the machine. Or maybe it's less dangerous for people working there when they have to deal with the machines, or just kind of really digging into those parts of how your customer, how in this case that company is dealing with packaging. How does packaging, or in the process of the actual product or parts of it, touch their day to day?
And do you always find something, or are there times when you just tell your client, go back to the drawing board, do your job better, and then come back to us?
So typically, it's what we find most often. It's not necessary. It's not the technology. It's not the product. Like so in your case, you're when you're in the beginning stages, and we do work with startups at times of where there needs to be a refinement, you might as well find that out at the beginning, right? If it's like, oh, if there's too much moisture, that entire packaging goes, and like there's nothing to be made. So then it has to go back to the technical side, and that's not our forte. So that's where the engineers, the scientists work with that. But typically, if it's a solid product that just falls on deaf ears, it just doesn't get through any of the hurdles we talked about before, or maybe additional ones where you have 5 people saying yes, and then the CFO says, yeah, no, we don't have the money for that, or those kind of things. How do you set up that entire conversation so it doesn't come back to that very last conversation and it goes to no? Like, how do you bring people together? So typically the technology, or the new product, the innovative product, is solid. It's just that somebody either is trying to poke a hole into it, and kind of gets to that where you were saying earlier, where it seems that new product is inferior, which it typically isn't. It's typically a misunderstanding, or especially when you start out on this is a sustainable product. People seem to immediately go, oh, that's like if we have additional money, that's like a nice to have. And to really come in from that side of, this is a must have because you're an innovative company and you're trying to bring the best products to your customers. You're trying to bring the best service to your customers. This is why you want to take a close look at us. And even if it's something where the product is still a little bit in development, to spark enough interest that they want to move forward with it. So let's say if the current packaging is something where the resources that it's made out of, they could run into issues. Well, now you could come in with, well, the materials that we're using, like we have guarantees that this is going to be available, or it can be made close by. There's another, angle. And a company may be willing to take on the path of, okay, let's explore that together. Let's bring that product to the finish line, if it may be not quite there yet in terms of the technology.
2 more examples to jog my brain a little more. So working with a very large organization and very keen on sustainable products, there are 2 challenges that we find. One is exactly what you said. There is no end to pilots and optimization. And you could die in the process, right? Because it's not costing them anything. And if you ask them for money, it's going to stall anyways. So you continue in the pre-commercialization phase for years many times, and it doesn't land anywhere. And that becomes a huge challenge for companies. How much do you optimize? And again, there is such a plethora of people in order to make that one decision, because it's a big shift for them, that it becomes challenging. So that's part one of the challenge. The second is a very interesting challenge. We were trying to create a product for tea bag kind of packaging, the outer cover of the tea. Relatively simple, doesn't need that kind of barrier, and we ran it really well. So the interesting thing was that the converter, the toller, told us everything went well, but your package seals at 150 degrees Celsius instead of 120, and we won't accept it. So you're kind of, why would you not accept it? Oh, in terms of the number of products they produce, the energy cost changes totally. So there's a challenge, right? And they're right about it. So okay, coming back. So one is, how do you get out of that phase of getting out of pre-commercialization? And the second is, how do you tweak and understand the intricacies of a conversion process to be able to service the converter better?
I think one big part is for companies in the pre-commercialization phase to work very closely with the initial customers and really understand what they're looking for. So kind of getting to in this case, the temperature difference. And again, I'm not an engineer, but to kind of figure that part out at the very beginning, because it could be something that is, solvable on the science side, so engineering side, or it could be something where they just have to recalibrate their machine and it's not a deal breaker at the end, but they're already so excited about how this is different for them that becomes kind of a non-issue. So they really closely working together with the initial fan group, so to speak, because I find when we work with clients who have customers that have really high barriers and who are kind of hesitant, like at the beginning still, that's not a good pre-commercialization partner. Like, you want a true fan to kind of work out the kinks and understand how to best like make this work. And then then there's the next step of bringing that to mainstream. That's kind of like two different like steps. But you first want to have that product that's working and kind of understanding, and having a partner who's really open, who doesn't need to like criticize. And like, I don't know what your specific situation was, but you really want a partner who is in on like tinkering, understanding how this could be working, running into walls together and be like, oh, well, I guess that didn't work. Let's try something else. And people having different ideas, kind of like really partnering. I feel like that yields the best results at that stage.
Do you find that there is an optimal size for first movers? And why I ask this question is that when you go to a very large conglomerate, they have a complexity in decision making, as well as nobody wants to be responsible, although the size of the account is large. And they, of course, dealing with hundreds of possibilities. Whereas what we found is that if you go to the fastest adopters are smaller scale players who want to make a change, and maybe the next phase is mid. So is that a general trend, do you see, or do you think that that's not the case? It depends on how you position yourself.
I think there's one part of where it depends on the product, because sometimes these huge corporations have innovation centers of where they're trying out things internally, but then when somebody comes up with an idea externally and kind of like, oh, we fit right in what you're currently exploring, that's kind of a great partnership. But with big corporations, I'm always a little leery. And again, like, not an attorney either, but kind of, hey, make sure that your IP is secure so that no big company, whatever, can run off with whatever it is. So in general, to find a kind of mid-sized company that wants to make a change is typically in the space, in the sustainability space, a really good partner. They're open to trying out things. It typically needs to be a company that's a little bit on the larger side so that they don't feel like their current operations get interrupted. That's always the thing if you're getting into kind of more the smaller end of mid-sized companies. But to have like a mid-sized private company that has like the time and patience to like play around and has a leadership that's open for innovation, I think those are the gems to look for.
And similar to that, what again we've found in our experience, it depends on who you talk to. The same company can be very, very open. And again, like you mentioned, it depends on the KPIs of the person. So, say you were talking to a person who heads procurement and their KPI is mainly cost reduction, cost reduction, cost reduction, and they're not even looking at the holistic picture, it's just cost of purchase. Um, the sustainability people are wanting to make the company look better, but they may not have an access to the business side. The marketing people want the product to look good, but again, they may not have a say in many of the purchase decisions. The C-suite is very difficult to get to. It depends on the size of the company. So it's not accessible, or if it is accessible, they may not be interested, and they may say, "Oh, talk to this guy in our organization," and that person may take longer in order to be able to sell. So how does a company that is coming out with interesting products overcome this challenge of finding the right person to do their bidding?
So I think oftentimes what I see, it's a good idea to get in different parts. Again, like to understand the different people, because even if you were to get to the CEO, I'm pretty sure for your company, you're not just like, okay, signing off, I'm the CEO. You're probably asking a number of your trusted people within the company, depending on what it is that you're making the decision about. You're getting input from other people. And so that's the same for other companies. And so for an innovative company to come in with a solution to kind of understand, having initial conversations with different people, could be from personal connections or just like finding different ways in. I think that is a way to go. But then really getting in at the C-suite, finding, okay, where is that big nut that my solution is cracking at the very top? It is hard, and that's something that we do too, to get really technical solutions into the language of a CFO. Because like if you can convince that person, not convincing isn't like talking to them until they finally get it, but kind of making it relevant to them in what matters to them, they will get the other people, hey, you should talk to so and so. Yes, but then it's like a top down. Now it's an initiative from the C-suite. Now it is something that people pay attention to. It's not something somebody has like an idea, we should maybe do that, but then it's like other things have priority and so forth. If you can get that attention from the C-suite, I think that is really the key opening point to driving a big change in a company.
So I guess what you're saying is that you have to tackle both ends. There is an acceptance in the C-suite, but you have to also warm up the team so that there is no resistance that is happening on that side. I love your and I kind of started with this because I love your idea of using the term value instead of price or cost. Because as soon as otherwise you talk to the team, the immediate idea is that, oh, we are more expensive. So give us some incidences of where the product was more expensive or the service was more expensive, but there was a higher value add for the customer, and hence you or the company was able to convince that this is a good idea, you should go for it. So maybe if you have, like, if I'm sure you have, but if you can jog your memory for three different kind of examples, and it could be products and service, so then what will happen is it'll drive home better for people listening.
Yeah, so one example, which sounds really so simple, is kind of from the building side, to change the lighting system to LED lighting. It sounds like kind of such a no-brainer, but if you look at the percentages in the US alone, we're barely over halfway there. So it's not as much of a no-brainer, right? So we were working with a company that was working in that field, yes, changing light bulbs, but kind of overall making the lighting systems more efficient. And they were always getting in with the people at the building level, the technical people. They were like, yeah, we need that. We don't have to, like climbing up and down a ladder every so often. It's just like takes so much time. It's so complicated. It can be dangerous at times. Yes, we want that. Well, a lot of building owners, so if you get to larger building owners, those buildings only exist on a spreadsheet. Those people typically don't even know the building or have been to the building. That's just how it works. And so it's really hard. Like that way, we get back to that cost. It's a line item. Do we really need that? And so we were talking with them, and in this specific case, the owner of the company was very frustrated because they had spent so much money on different advertising, Facebook, making a video. I mean, like they spent a lot of money on advertisement because they had figured out they should be reaching the asset managers or the people owning the buildings, but they could not get through. It was like a complete wall they ran into. So when we started talking with them, we said, so how about we use your fantastic relationship with the people on the ground and give them a way how they can talk to the building owner. Because if you bring an improvement internally, hey. And so what we did is we looked at what does a building owner care about? Well, it's the value of the building, right? At some point, the building is going to get sold. So what drives that? Well, if we have tenants that are long-term committed to the building, maybe they're expanding, what they will do that when they're happy about where they're at. They want the latest and greatest. They want to see different things, improvements, and so forth. And so we're able to make the changing light bulbs into a strategic move for an entire portfolio and empowered people on the ground to make that case internally. And that worked. And so it's basically kind of finding out like how do people make decisions, what do they care about, and who should be talking to them. So yeah, so that was one really great example where just like that little shift made a huge difference.
Okay, do you have more?
For another case, we had there's like carbon tracking technologies, right? Like because you need to figure out how much carbon you're using and so forth. And the way that company came into their customers was through reporting. Hey, this is you need this for reporting purposes. So we have this data for you. Well, like there's some changes that are going on in different parts of the world where reporting may not be that important anymore. However, we took the step back and said, okay, how does saving carbon count into the businesses that you're trying to get into? Well, it had a lot to do with the supply chain. It had a lot to do with saving money on like the operation side. And they were able to tie the data to the safety of employees in the production facilities. They were able to tie it to how the supply chain became more reliable by being able to track the carbon, and then showing at the end of the day, hey, we reduced our carbon footprint by X% was kind of a bonus that they could use internally, but they could use this to actually improve their operations.
Do you want to go with another one, or I have another problem to put on your lap?
All right. All right. Yeah, hit me with another problem. Sure.
Okay. So the traditional business we've been in is food wrap and carry, which fundamentally is things like the burger wraps and the carry bags for fast food. And we have some great things happening for us. We use only renewable material. We make things out of sugarcane residue. We make sure that the quality is up to spec, etc., etc., etc. What we found is very interesting that the salespeople that we have are very scared of going to the brands directly. They want to work with just the tollers or the converters because they don't want to feed the converter. So the converter, of course, works on, cost of goods purchased and then the selling price and the margin that is going to be there. So they never want the brands to know their purchase price, right? So that's where the buffer is. So it's a technical challenge. So what I've found is that typically the sales team never wants to understand the challenges that the brand faces or the real customer faces. Forget going further down to the consumer, because in the end, what will drive the product will be the consumer themselves and understanding how it is being used. Now, if we push them to go straight to the brand in order to kind of get a brand acceptance for a better product in many ways, what happens is that many times the toller or the converter will start saying this product doesn't work and they're out of business. So it's a very typical challenge. So, what would your suggestion be? How should the companies be going to the final user of the product and understanding and devising a product for that challenge rather than getting stuck in this middle space where it is being governed by the conversion, not even a challenge, the conversion desire, so to say?
So I think when you're saying kind of there's the company that's using the wrappers and then there's the consumer, I think that is, especially in that field of, where the product actually lands in front of a consumer, that is the biggest part to understand, because the consumer today wants to know what is it. And if I don't know what it is, then I may not care about it. I mean, like, how often do you think like what the wrapper, well, I take that back. I do all the time. So that's a problem. So that gets me stuck in, I don't even want to buy this if I don't know what to do with the wrapper or the packaging. But there's such a great opportunity to show a consumer the power that they have. So, like little things, if you could like even like print something, and that's where it's the information, like sharing that information. Like typically you wouldn't put anything on a wrapper. Like why would you put something on a wrapper? It's on there for like 2.5 seconds until the product is, let's say, eaten, right? But you could make such a big impact by using that as a little bit of a teaching moment. And then the salesperson can feel so empowered by bringing information, bringing good things to people, and people want that information because now they feel good about having eaten whatever they were eating, and they may have learned something. And you could have, like there could be an additional idea. I don't know how all of this works, but you could like print something in addition. I had a fish sandwich in Germany, and the wrapper was actually paper, and the way it came around it acted as the like napkin and the packaging, because then you could like, this is how it was nicely displayed. Then when they gave it to you, they put it up so it was closed, so you could transport it. And at the end, when I was done eating, I looked and there was a poem written on it, and I was like, I will remember that. I will tell
Mind
people
blown.
I will tell people to go to that place. So now you can create a whole use case of how that packaging is driving additional customer demand, like additional consumer demand. Like people will come to the store, will come to that place because of a wrapper. And the great thing is you can put actual numbers around that.
And then the challenge that companies face otherwise is also commoditization. So if you don't differentiate, you're going to be a paper supplier. It's not even a wrapper supplier. Even that is a downstream thing, like it's a paper supplier to a converter. And the other thing I've noticed is that typically the converters want ease of replacement. So they would want you to produce a product that looks and feels similar to everything else, because that means that they can differentiate. But the challenge that sometimes is faced by, say, a more unique proposition like something made from agricultural residue is that it changes the natural color. So what they would call is anathema, because there is shade variation over the year. But it could be converted to positive act that, as something is transforming in age, there is a certain change of color, and that's a good thing. So so how would you tackle that one challenge that, they want it to look like everything else, and then they don't want it to alter at all in its shade, which you and I as consumers don't bother, right? We don't really look at the wrapper and say, oh, it's a different shade of brown. I don't think that crosses our mind. So how would you tackle that challenge?
I believe there's probably research around that of like the consumer not caring, which is an important part of, looking from the demand side of how would somebody not buy this product because of that. And also, it's very different. Like in the automotive industry, your parts have to be exactly to specification because that car is not going to run. There's going to be huge issues. So to kind of show how the different coloration during a time can actually be a benefit. Again, like putting real numbers behind that. What does it mean to be like everyone else? Who wants to be like everyone else? Like how again, making that business case of how could you actually sell more by having that different coloring. And so, by the way, you should actually pay us more because we can provide you with a different coloring. But to kind of come in from that sideway, and those are cases that really need to be brought in from like the very beginning. So that's when we discover these different value points. Like this is like a challenge once it comes from the customer. They're like, yeah, we don't like the different coloring. However, if you know it's different, you put that into how you talk about your product in the very first sales conversation. You may not need to, you could lead with it. It could possibly be the one thing that that somebody will open the email because it says that. Sick and tired of the same old, we can come up with something different. We're ready for you. Just like kind of thinking through the entire, anything that could be a but or yeah, we don't like that, to understand that customer in such a way to be preemptive, like to be proactive, bring out those things and turn them into the part of the value proposition.
Love it. I want to dig into your, and I'm sorry for typecasting, but I'm really keen to dig into your structured German brain that comes up with a 5-step process. So talk to us about this whole idea, how you drill down to a process and a 5-step. And what does that mean? And if, after this podcast, if people listen to it, and I'm sure they will, and when they come to you, what would you suggest that this will be our mechanism to kind of take you through the right strategy?
Yeah, so we developed a framework to be sure that we can touch on all the important points, even though every single one of our clients has a different problem, different very specific setup, but to be able to touch on the different parts. And we're dividing it into 2 big buckets. One is understanding of why people buy. We often do that with the consumer, and we kind of get into kind of the personal, emotional kind of side of the consumer brain. However, we have that same thing for somebody working for a corporation, and it becomes even a little more difficult because they're a person, right? And then they have a role in the corporation. So really understanding like why are they buying something now? Why are they solving something in a certain way right now? Like, why are we buying this wrapper right now? Like, somebody got in trouble for not having that same color at some point. And why would we change? And then the second part of this is, how does a company, how do the people involved, how do they buy? We kind of know that when people these days, they don't want to get the cold call. They want to do their own research. They have a problem, they'll go Google, ChatGPT, whatever it, and they're probably like 70% of the way there before they talk to anybody. So they're really well informed. So you need to kind of be there and feed information at the different stages. So really understanding what type of information do I need to, if somebody's in procurement, okay, I'm going to look for certain number specifications kind of thing. Well, if I want to show up in front of a CFO, in addition, I need to have some strategic messaging in there. Then I need to think, okay, those people are going to talk internally. Okay, what is that? We see demo videos all the time from anything software to hard products. Well, who is going to see that? I don't think a CFO is going to like sit down and watch like a demo video, but maybe there's the highlight thing of how this changes their day to day, how it changes, how it contributes to their company mission. So the part of like, why are they even buying in the first place? And then how do they buy, their internal process, and also the things they need to see. Bringing those two big parts together, that is what we really focus on. And then kind of find also because you can talk about like, okay, this is how it should look like all day long. Our clients typically don't have an army of people sitting around in marketing and sales. They just need to get their stuff done. How do you actually do it? Like, yes, I could do 100 different things right now. I could come up with videos, a new sales funnel, new advertisement, maybe a new website, like all these different things. Like, what does it mean? Like, none of that matters. Like, your customer does not care if you have a new website or a new logo. They just have an experience, and you need to make sure that experience leads to them buying from you. Because at the end of the day, in your specific case, well, in packaging, well, we cannot have more plastic flying around or packaging that just gets wasted. I mean, I was reading an article from just a couple of years ago that one bin in a restaurant where everything basically comes from the ground, goes into the ground. That's like such a beautiful cycle. Like, so you're on a mission. Our clients are on a mission why they're starting it in the first place. So we do need to be able to convince people that they're using the products, they're changing to new technologies, no matter if they are on the sustainability train, which, like, I want that, but they may not be, but there may be enough reasons for them to change. So let's get them there by really understanding them and supporting them with what they're trying to do.
Did we go 5 steps or did we go 3?
So I kept with the 2 big buckets because it's, the human brain goes 1, 2, 3 too many. So I like between understanding the customer, their why, their how, and then making it possible for our clients to make that easy, to make that possible, because there's not an entire department. Sometimes there are several salespeople and maybe a small internal or external marketing team. How can we make this happen and making it really easy? A very easy action plan. Let's get this done, then we can expand. So really making it easy for companies that are small to mid-size, because the big corporations, they don't have it figured out, and they have tons of people. So that is my personal mission to support companies with like really big missions, because it is doable.
Absolutely. No, that's great. So are there challenges that you are noticing? There is this, what we find is that there are many companies that kowtow the trends. So there is a certain shift that is taking place in US in particular, with less focus on sustainability. And we are finding the bigger corporations, at least, who had committed to 2025, 2028, 2030 goals, doing both, shifting their goals and watering it down or not being interested. Are you seeing that challenge happen in terms of sustainability goals, and how would that impact the companies who are more oriented towards a better planet?
I do see a lot of change in terms of how people talk about things. I don't think people have changed their perspective necessarily. And I do think a lot of people, a lot of company leaders do understand the actual threat to their business, because you may care about sustainability or not, but if your production relies on water and you're somewhere in Texas, you have to figure something out. And it is very likely going to be a sustainable technology that you're going to have to implement. If I'm looking at the topic from all companies need to be innovative to grow. You always need to come up with something new that improves how you're doing things today. And I feel like we've been kind of putting sustainability on the side as let's just sit down and understand. Like, we really need to save the planet. And so many people just like don't have access to the topic that way, but they very much understand if a machine is no longer running, if the goods are not coming in on time, if you're in food production and you need your strawberries to come in and they're all whatever, they're all moldy because they were forgotten on a truck, or it was too hot or too cold or whatever. Like those are real issues that then get tied to, well, there's food waste, right? There's waste of labor, water, like all these different things. And I think that is the big part that people will connect to, is how we're handling our resources. I mean, like, who wants to be wasteful? Like, that really doesn't make any sense. And I think to connect with people where they are, especially if it's during times where this is like a hot topic. I mean, I grew up I was a young child in the 1980s. In school, like, we learned about the dying forests. That was a long time ago. That was several decades ago. And it's not like that got really resolved. We made a lot of changes, but people will not, I don't think humans work that way, to be set down and decide, okay, now we just need to be sustainable. People don't like change in the first place. So if it's something that they associate less with, I have to do less things. I can't maybe travel. I need to, it's going to be inconvenient. It's going to be, they build like this wall up that's not necessary. People get excited about, like you mentioned the word AI and everybody goes crazy. A few years back, it was like, maybe it was like Web3. It was, the iPhone. It's like people go crazy about different things. So if that is the language of humans, let's talk about that. Let's talk in their language and let's drive change. So if somebody like you and I were passionate about sustainability, and I will make changes just for that and take the extra step, do the extra thing, we can get other people to do extra things if they understand it, that it's good for their purpose. And it doesn't need to necessarily be framed in a sustainability or green context or whatsoever. It can be something about like healthy food. I mean, that's a big thing. Like if we can't eat in the first place, there's not a lot that comes after that. And so we need to have healthy soil. And so what goes into that? Okay, now people maybe understand, and really bringing the emotional part in it and then the logical part, how people make decisions. There's always that emotional part. A lot of people do make decisions logically, but typically there's a big emotional part to it. So like, let's find out and cater to the people so that they can make good decisions.
I just love that the underlying tone of this conversation has been that of value, right? So I think that underlies, like, all, like, as I'm listening to you and learning from you, what I realize is that it's not about one thing or the other. It's about what creates value for the customer, and go back to the fundamentals and understand that. And then, yes, the communication that I understand now after listening to you is that it doesn't have to be about what our purpose is. It can be about what they feel is more important. So another example that came to my mind is that we were launching a range of food serviceware, again made from sugarcane residue, etc. And interestingly, our whole brand team came out with the tagline, Eat Safe. They didn't talk about sustainability and why it was made from sugarcane residue and it used this much less water, or it would go back to compost. Those were all less important. What they felt was, at that point, I'm talking 8 years back, the customer was more concerned about carcinogens in its food serviceware, whether it was being washed properly or not. So this was a disposable. So it was interesting to see that take. They said, we don't want to, there's too much green out there. So let's talk about what the customer bothers about. And I think that's what I'm hearing from you, which is so interesting and powerful. Don't try to make it about yourself, but make it about what the customer needs. Is that a synopsis that you would agree with?
Yes, absolutely. To that point, what you were saying, if we focus on the customer and there's not one value, everybody has kind of a different way on how they're experiencing the world, what's important to them, and they have their own big reasons. And it could be health, it could be their children, it could be their personal goals of what they want to achieve. It could be, something in on the sports side. If somebody is wants to achieve certain goals there, they need to have certain food, or they don't want to put certain things in their body, for example, or being outside, like breathing in clean air, or just like different things like that. And yeah, really bringing it to understanding people, meeting them where they're at, because that's where there will change. Nobody wants to be told like you need to change. We can get
Yeah,
them
I
to
agree.
understand. It's like, you need to do this. Nobody wants to hear that. But if it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I want to try that. Maybe maybe I like that. Maybe that's something that could be good for me. That could be good for my child. That makes me feel better. Why not use that approach?
Yeah, that's really powerful. Okay, so a more kind of question around C2 impact. What are the organizations that mostly would come to you? Are you seeing a certain kind of trend in, and I don't mean sustainability because that's the underlying idea, but is there a certain kind of industry that comes to you more? And then maybe this is a little bit of a loaded question, so you can answer it as you want. What are the kind of organizations that you like to work with? So let's tackle those two.
So companies find us who are at a certain stage where they're frustrated, where they think, I thought this was very clear. Customers should just come and buy from us. Why is that not happening? I'm opening the doors. Hello. I want people to come. And they're frustrated because it makes so much sense to them. It makes so much sense to us why people would become their customers, but it's not happening. And that's where we can come in and basically help them diagnose where they're stuck, because typically it's not everything isn't working. It's certain parts that are not working. So it's typically a company that has done well so far. They do have customers, they have a technology or a product that is working, but they feel stuck. They're like, I thought we were just going straight up, and now we're like here, and it's like a screeching halt. Like all the different things that we're doing, we keep running into different walls. We're spending a lot of money um, on different things, like hiring somebody in sales, spending money on an ad campaign, like different things, like different tactics, and those are not working, and they're frustrated. So that's typically where a company is at that we have conversations with. And the type of companies that we like working with is really people, leaders in the industry who are so passionate, who put their heart in. I mean, I just recently talked to a founder. They've been working for 10 years on the technology, and they finally feel it's ready. And now they're like, okay, so where's the investors? It's basically a money printing machine. Like, why is that not clear? And that's where we get really excited when we can see, you're so close, and like get you over the hump, and with excitement, like help them really like be a partner and get them. And it's so wonderful to see when we work with our clients that out of their frustration of where they feel like they couldn't get any further, that was just it was just like, okay, we, to your point, right from the very beginning, we're a sustainable company. We kind of knew we weren't going to make a lot of money. It's fine. No, you can be a successful organization. You can be a successful entrepreneur. You can have a successful company. And that is okay, because if you're not successful, your technology is not going to reach the many people it should be reaching. And so that is what I really love, when somebody thinks they kind of have to stay small because they're in the sustainability space, because it's not true. You can be super successful and do something good. It is possible.
Yeah, it's something like do good and be good, that kind of an idea. All right. So just coming back to my first part of my question, is there a certain trend in the type of industry as well, or it's pretty industry agnostic and relatively random in terms of the customer base?
we really are focusing in on the food system because we personally feel close to it, and it is something that affects all of us. And so this is really an area that we want to support businesses in because it affects all of humanity and it affects all different parts as well. So anything from growing food to transporting it to the manufacturing part, if there is one involved, to getting it to the consumer, or whoever is consuming the food, and then what happens at the end. So obviously that involves supply chain, that involves packaging, right? It involves that entire cycle of how we can live with the planet, nourish us, and then kind of feed it back into the cycle.
You just made my day. That is, and it's so true, right? It's so interconnected. The whole food system is connected to the soil and everything else, right? And sometimes we don't understand the complexity of it, and we cannot survive without it. So I'm glad you chose this one, and I interrupted you, so please go ahead.
No, I was basically kind of just that is the area that we're really passionate about, and that really integrates us humans into that full cycle with our beautiful planet. And no matter if people are on board with it or not, like, we all want to be healthy, we want to live long lives, and we want to see our children thrive, and it's possible. And I don't think it involves, I can't do this, that, or the other. It's a, let's look at the entire system and see what small changes can we make. There's little things that everybody can do. And I know some people are, well, small steps don't count. I really believe. I mean, if you're looking at the good old, that's where data comes in, the bell curve, if you can get a small amount of people to make huge changes, that's great. But if you can get this big part in the middle to just do a little something different, I think this is where the big change will happen.
I totally agree with you. Every choice matters. So yeah, so every little step that anybody takes has an effect, whether we realize it or not. So the one thing before I take the arc towards closure was the monetization model. How do you look at monetizing for C2 impact? Is it more a consulting model, or do you look at having a stake in the impact that you create for the customer? How does that system work?
So we decided that we were going to be very flexible based on the company that we work with the caveat, I don't do hourly. Hourly just makes me feel cringy. When I'm in, I'm in. Like, I work with the people who are excited. I want to be excited. And so what we do is, as we get to know somebody who ends up becoming our client, we determine, okay, this is something we need to do. What's kind of the first goal? And we make that a project and we work through that. And then it's typically, okay, so how did this go? Okay, this is what we like. Maybe this year, sometimes somebody goes for a few months and they kind of do go work with our plan that we created. And then they'll come back and they're like, okay, can we do something else? And so it's typically, it's project based. We've done things, especially in the startup space, where we basically invest, as in our time. We get you to either the investment or to that first set of customers or whatever stage you're in. And we can do a percentage, again, agreed upon beforehand, very clear, very open. But again, to make it possible, because a lot of times, especially in the early stages, somebody may not in the position, but when we see there's real opportunity, I don't want to see another solution get stuck in oh, they couldn't just get to market. It just didn't work out. And so I'm really passionate about, hey, let's figure this out. If it's not going to work, not all new solutions work out, but let's find it out really fast. Then you can either pivot or, well, decide you don't want to pursue that, but let's get you there and then we can decide. So we're very flexible, but we're very open. We work with our clients based on what they currently have going on. We do kind of mixing, matching things. A lot of our clients stay on like on retainers as like, I just want to call you. And so it's like different things that we do again to really support our clients, what they need, and be there for them, to be real partners versus just an in and out vendor.
It's so beautiful for me to hear. One of the challenges that I've faced in US, and I'm a recent immigrant, it's only been 4 or 5 years for me, and everything is this hourly basis. And I'm like, it's okay for you to calculate cost on time basis. But then if you don't generate value and you just clock time, that doesn't make sense to me. And but everybody is so keen on time. So I'm glad that, you didn't agree with that whole idea. And kind of what I felt as you were speaking was you are practicing what you preach. If you preach about the idea of creating value, you're practicing creating value too for the people coming to you. So, and that's so heartwarming in some ways as I listen to you. You know that there is flexibility, and you want to find a way to enable something to happen. So more power to you on that. So one question that I have to ask you is this idea that you work on, which is called Work Life Plus. And I want to know more about that project and, why and what and how. Well,
That is more of a little side project. A very good friend of mine from, well, gosh, we've known each other now over 20 years, and she's very much into the how do people work? How do we emotionally connect with our work? How do we need to live so that in a complicated world we can all exist and work together? And so that is kind of my being a little bit of a business advisor. That's kind of been our collaboration, and she's been a great partner and providing feedback for my business. So there's a big shout out to Tina Gaskell, who is running Work Life Plus.
super. That's so great that you're doing that because I think it's so important. And I was just, in fact, we were on a call this morning and our innovations lead and Alex, who you met, the sustainability lead, there were three of us discussing. And they were, when I jumped on the call, they were discussing something about work-life balance. And like Sam, our innovation lead, looked at me and said, Ved, I'm sure you're taking work all the time. So I was like, actually, I'm really particular now about my Sabbath, which has come about because of my wife. Because I grew up in India and we had no idea about this separation of work and life. Work was life and life was work, and it all blended in. If somebody wanted to come to meet me on Sunday, that was fine, or Saturday. I didn't even have something called a Saturday. So it was all good. It was easy. But my wife, who came from a more Christian faith as well, and she basically talked to me about this idea, and I just love it now. I just love the idea of I don't even eat on a Sunday. I just kind of start fasting on Saturday evening, and I only eat my Sunday dinner then. I don't look at my electronics. I kind of get my daughters to hide my phone and my iPad or whatever. And I say, I'll pick it up on Monday morning whenever I can do that. And I just feel I'm a different person on Sunday night or Monday morning just by having let go of the mind and the body space. And it's been so beautiful to experience that myself because I thought this is all Western privilege, is what I would have justified it as at an earlier stage.
No, that is really wonderful. To just decide to do it, right? You don't need permission from anybody or society or like whatever works for you to figure that out. And to not the whole idea of FOMO is so strong of where we don't, we check our phones and it's like, well, something happened and I need to react to it. If we can disconnect from that, I find that really powerful. And I've made changes. It's hard, like whatever you grew up with or has been trained on from society. I always felt in order to work out, I had to work in the morning first, and then I could go during the midday break. And I decided last summer that I was working much better if I got my mind and body aligned first thing in the morning. It's changed my life. I mean, it sounds so trivial, but the first thing I do in the morning is I do a workout, but kind of with breathing and mindfulness and everything combined, and it just gets my day into a whole different track.
I can imagine. I'm also a proponent of that for sure. Early mornings are something that can totally, change your day. So I'm glad that you found that. Okay, taking cognizance of time, and you've been so kind with yours. If you imagine 5 or 10 years hence, how would you see C2 Impact making an impact, deeper impact, and making change? What would be your dream? Say a timeline of 5 years, 10 years, whichever one you prefer.
Well, C2 Impact would have grown to a small company, so beyond the 2 people we're now, and provide a place of work where people who have the same passion and different abilities, capabilities to bring to the table combined, and bring in people who are in different stages of their life, and everything that we do is value based. So it's not about hours clocked. It's not a 9 to 5. It's our client needs to get this done. They have this big goal. Who are the best people on the team? Assemble that and have that in-house for a client. And at the same time have really happy people working with us, because I've seen that in corporate where people just dread going to work and the constant pressure. And I just want people to bring their different talents to the table and get paid for it. I would love to grow the company to that part. And the other part, we're kind of starting to build out a practical part of C2 Impact. It's going to be, this is the first time announcing this, so it will be called Meadow and Hive. And what we're doing is, I currently took on a side gig as a beekeeper. I don't like the word beekeeper. We need to talk about that, because I'm more of a bee rancher, I would say, because the bees really know what to do. And we're going to start keeping chickens. And I kind of want to bring things to people to kind of see there's small things that they can do, empower people to choose different things in their lives. And it doesn't have to be everything at once. It doesn't have to be, composting, keeping chickens, doing the bee thing, like all these. No, like whatever fits in your life, and bring companies to that can make that easier. So really empowering people to lead better lives and kind of see that beauty, kind of what you were saying, like not in front of a screen, but in like real life.
You're kind of going back to your childhood days growing up, right? In Germany, what you experienced. Okay, that takes me to my final question, and I'm so excited to hear your answer. What does good garbage mean to you?
I feel good garbage is, there's always something that can be used again. There's no real garbage. There's always an additional use, because I think everything that's on this planet has its purpose, and we just need to reconnect with that.
That's beautiful. I love the idea that you're so right. And everything has a purpose, and it kind of changes form, and there's just an idea of being able to utilize it well. So thank you so much for that. Simone, this has been such a delightful conversation. I've personally learned so much, not just from the work you're doing, but the ideas and the frame of mind that you bring in, the perspective that you bring in. I love the idea of constantly creating value. And like I said before, that's been like the underlying current of the conversation, that, how do you create value? And the way I look at you now is that creating value in your personal life, creating value in your community, creating value in the business that you do, creating value in the lives of the customers that you serve, and the businesses that they work with. So this has been so delightful. I'm sure you're going to help so many companies do better and better. And thank you so much for your work, and thank you, Pete, for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Bed. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you for listening to the Good Garbage podcast. Follow us on social media to never miss an episode. Links are in the description below. I'm your host, Ved Krishna. See you next time.